I'm Pastor George Borghardt, and I serve as a senior pastor at Immanuel Lutheran Church in Bossier City, Louisiana. I also have the privilege of serving as the president of Higher Things. We are continuing our text study of the book of Romans. We are in the third chapter, starting with the 5th verse. I would like to invite you, if you'd like a deeper dive into this study, a more sort of in the dirt and interactive study, to go to myht.higherthings.org and become one of our MyHT Gold subscribers. Our Gold subscribers get discounts on our Higher Things merchandise. They get Bible studies and confirmation materials, and also for less than a quarter, what it amounts to be less than a quarter a day, they get this interactive study, an additional 45 minutes of interaction with a teacher concerning this Bible study text. So myht.higherthings.org, join us today. Now, a lot of times I have to, every single class, I need to do a little review, because we pick up new viewers every single day. That's what our analytics are telling us. And if you would, it would help us by sharing and liking and subscribing. That would be helpful as well. But we're in the last bit of the law section of Romans, which began roughly around 1:17, after Paul says, "I'm not ashamed of the gospel, for it's the power of God unto salvation to all who believe, first the Jew, then the Greek. For in it, the gospel, the righteousness of God is revealed from faith to faith, just as is written, the just will live by his faith." He then launches into what amounts to a whole section that is there to empty us of everything that we would do to hold before God as certain and sure, beginning with our judgment of others. He starts by talking about other people's sins, their unbelief, despite all the external evidences that there is a God. They deny him in creation and the like. So God gives them over to all sorts of sick things, men with men, women with women. And then more than that, even deeper, grosser things, which is like slander and lying, abuse, murderous thoughts, hating our neighbor, disobeying our parents, stealing, inventing evil things, faithless, heartless, all the like, a big list of things that we don't want to be in. But he's still talking about them. That not only do they do unspeakable, not only do they know that the wrath of God is revealed on all of this, they not only do the things, but they cheer on others who do them. 2 begins with just a sort of the tables turn, and he's not talking about them, he's talking about you. You're the one who do these bad things. When you judge others, you do the same things they do. You're worse than them because you're worse, because you're judging others. Do you think God's you're going to escape the wrath of God? 2 continues with he's tugging on the last fig leaf, trying to sort of wrestle it away from us, which is, I've got something in me that makes me better than someone else. And that is for his readers, I'm a good Jew. At least I'm not a Gentile. And Paul lays out in a very, very well laid argument that it's obedient. Hearing of the law doesn't matter, doesn't justify. Doing the law justifies. So the Gentiles, when they fall backwards into doing God's law, when they show that God's law is written in their hearts, they're just as Jew as the Jew. The circumcision isn't meant to be this outward sign. It's supposed to be an inward thing, an inward lived religion. And if it's not, then if you don't do the law, your circumcision is uncircumcision to God. Chapter 3 began yesterday. We started it with Paul starting serious rhetoric, which is going to round this area out, which is he's going to ask a question, then he's going to respond. He's going to ask a question, he's going to respond. He's going to ask a rhetorical question, then he's going to respond. So what advantage is there to being the Jew? What value is circumcision? Well, much in every way. There's a lot of value to circumcision. To begin with, the Jews were faithed with the words of God. So to the Jews came the words and promises of God, and that's the Old Testament. The Israelites, the Israelites were entrusted the words and promises of God. To them came the words and promises of God. So we're indebted to the Israelites for giving us the knowledge of Yahweh, which was God working through them. So that's the advantage of them. But what happens if they're unfaithful? So what if the ones who were faced with the faith are unfaithful with that faith that they've been faced with? Well, does their faithlessness nullify the faithfulness of God? And the answer is meginito, which is a phrase we're going to need to learn for the rest of this book. Meginito basically means heck no. It's the strongest no that you can possibly get. It's HE double hockey sticks no. Let God be true when though everyone was a liar, as it is written, that you may be justified or righteous in your words and prevail when you are judged. So God is faithful even when everyone else is faithful, and that is what we're going to put our hope in. And that's why this law section is going to come. The volume's going to keep being turned up. The vice going to keep being tightened, but it's not going to get us in the end, because God is faithful even when everybody else is not. Verse 5. If our unrighteousness serves to show the righteousness of God, what do we say? That God, hotheos, is atikos? Is he unrighteous? To epipheron, to bear on us, or to inflict upon us, to bring on us or gain wrath. Now remember, we had wrath earlier. The wrath of God is poured upon all manner of sinful people who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth of God. So Paul says, look, if like our righteousness magnifies God's righteousness, it's like we should, so like basically, so we're going to sin to show that God is righteous by how he deals with us. And he's like, no. Well, our unfaithfulness does not make God unfaithful. Our unfaithfulness makes us unfaithful. And Paul is very clear on this, that this is an awkward construction because kata anthropon lego. I'm speaking according to men. So like, I'm speaking I'm speaking in earthly terms. I'm speaking in human ways. I'm laying this out in a human argument. So like, since we're unrighteous, but if our unrighteousness shows God to be righteous, what do we say then? Is God like unrighteous when he inflicts his righteous wrath on us? Since, I mean, we can't be righteous, and he's righteous, we can't be righteous, and the system is flawed. Is he a bad God? Is he a bad God for punishing us? You're a bad God, God. Go to your room. Is that what's going on here? I mean, we're unrighteous. God's faithful. When he inflicts wrath on us, when unrighteousness is our base move, does that make God unrighteous? And the answer is meginito again, which I'm asking you to learn. Heck no. It doesn't make him unrighteous. It makes us unrighteous. It doesn't make him unrighteous. It makes us unrighteous. That is very important to take into account and process. How could God be the judge of the world? So it's like, we do evil things and we judge others and we do the same things that we judge others for. But God, who is the only judge, who by Paul's gospel in chapter 2, God will judge the world. God judges the world because God is the creator of the world. God is the maker of heaven and earth. He alone is righteous. Our unrighteousness does not make God a bad God for having to punish us. This is a thing that parents learn. Okay? You are not a bad parent when you punish your kid and your kid talks about how much they hate you for having to punish them. You wouldn't have punished them if they hadn't come in at 3 o'clock when their curfew was midnight. All right? I mean, it's not your fault. In the same way, God punishing us and giving us his wrath is not his fault. It's our fault. Now the thing here is, he is right and just in his punishment of us. I've been watching Forge with Fire, where these guys make these blades. They make these blades. There's like 4 of them. They make this blade. The judges judge them. The judges determine which blade is the least and eliminate somebody. And eliminate somebody. And eliminate somebody. The last man standing is the Forge with Fire champion for that day. The guys that I have the most respect for are the bladesmiths that after the judges judge them will say, yeah, that was a bad blade. That was a bad blade. It wasn't my best work. It was a bad blade. I hope I can sometime come back to the show and prove that I'm a better bladesmith than I just showed up to be. What we do with God is when God judges us, we're like, you're a bad God. I don't want a God like you. How dare you judge me? You're a very, 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 very bad God, Jerry. And the fact of the matter is, we're at fault. I don't want to punish my children. I punish them because I have to. God doesn't want to punish us. He punishes us because he has to. I mean, that's we brought it upon ourselves. And we've had a whole chapter and a half where Paul has laid out for us how we deserve this punishment. And then all of a sudden, he's like, well, is it a bad thing to be a Jew? Well, no, it's not a bad thing to be a Jew because they were faithed with the words of God. Well, what happens if they're unfaithful? Does that make God unfaithful? No, let God be true when everybody else is a liar. Well, if I'm unrighteous and he's righteous, it's like, does that make him a bad God, an unrighteous God for punishing me? And the answer is no. But we are incapable of making that honest determination because we're so skewed by our sin. Original sin is referred to as incurvatus in se in Latin, which is turned inwardness. We are slightly off kilter, concupiscent. I think the best definition I ever heard was Isaac Ostapowicz, one of our staff members' kids, who said concupiscence was I want to do naughty things. I mean that's pretty much. That's what concupiscence is. We are turned inward. We are slanted. We are off. And a really good, accurate sort of picture of this is in my own church. I love this church, but when you walk in the doors of my church, because of the way the building ended up having to be constructed, the front doors don't line up with the altar and the cross on top of the altar. So as you walk through the narthex, you see that something's off. And just like if you have 2 parallel lines, let's turn this around, 2 parallel lines going together, they will stay parallel forever. But if one of them is slightly off, the further that they go, the further apart they are. The greatest example of concupiscence and original sin that I've seen is this building being slightly off center. They're horrified by it. My dear saints of God, they're horrified. They're probably horrified that I'm mentioning it. Oh my God, don't tell them. No, 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 no. This is great. This is a gift because it's a teaching thing. Just a little angle off and we're lost. And who do we blame? Adam blamed God. We blame God. And so we say stupid things because, I mean, we're so advanced. We say stupid things like, I don't want to believe in a God who would condemn somebody else to hell. Well, what's he supposed to do? I mean, what would you have him do? What would you have him do? He's not a bad God because we're bad people. We're bad people. He's a good God. This is what he's left to do. But that's not what he leaves them with. He doesn't stop there. If he stopped there, he would be a bad God, but he doesn't stop there. Excuse me, I have to take a sip of my Diet Mountain Dew in my higherthings.org/merchandise cup. Buy one. I'll just keep turning around until the emblem shows. There it is. What do? We blame him for it. You know, it was perfectly fine, God, me and my dog, me and all the animals. I was good. You had to give me this woman, that woman, the one you gave me. So the sin is her fault and sin is your fault, God. No, we're at fault. We're the problem. And that's the confession that Paul is pushing us toward. It is our unrighteousness which causes the wrath of God to be poured upon us. Not somebody else's. It's ours. Because the law is never talking to someone else. The law is always talking to you. So never sit in the pew and think that pastor's preaching to someone else. He's not. He's preaching to you. He's preaching to you. That's who he's preaching to. You're the problem. You're the reason why God sends his son. You're the one that God wants to save. And to do so, he has to send his son. We're not going to hear about that until 321. But right now, we're building the argument. We're removing all the things, all the different layers. We can't trust in our works. We can't trust in us being better than someone else. There's nothing that we can hold on to before God going, I've always been a Christian my whole life. That should count for something. None of it counts for anything. What counts for anything is doing the law. Do this and live. Don't do, die. Otherwise, you're done. And it's not God's fault. It's your fault. He's the judge of the world. And if he can't judge us for our sins, how could he possibly judge the world? And what's great about this is that we expect him to judge the world. We just don't expect him to judge us. We believe he's going to judge the world. We pray for him to judge the world. We tell him, you stick it to them, God. They're bad people. But how's he going to judge the world if he can't even judge us? If he's a bad God for judging us, how's he going to judge the world? We're going to stop here. And I'm going to give you a little gospel. I'm going to fast forward a few verses and just say this. The righteousness which God requires of you, the righteousness that you don't have, that he punishes you for not having, he put on his son. He took the punishment that you deserved and he put it on his son. And he took the holy life lived perfectly before God of his son and he put it on you. And that sweep swap saves you. And so if you think that the last word, and this was Luther's problem too, that the last word in this sentence is God's condemnation and it's our fault, you're a bad God. But he's not a bad God because he doesn't stop there. He sends Jesus to save you. And he is our hope and he is our salvation. We're going to have fun with this in the deep dive. Join us in just a few minutes for our deep dive in Romans chapter 3. I'll see you.